First on our news at 7, we are tracking Tropical Storm Nicole with team coverage on New Providence, Grand Bahama, and Abaco. The latest coordinates and current conditions are straight ahead.
Tropical Storm Nicole expected to become a Category 1 hurricane by tomorrow afternoon as it makes landfall on the island of Abaco. I'm Megan Shepard, and I will have the details tonight on Our News.
West Grand Bahama is one of the areas expected to take a hard hit by the impacts of Nicole. And while some residents say they are prepared to leave, others say they will ride it out at home. I'm Jamila Mizik, and I'll have the details coming up tonight on Our News.
And then in Our News at 7:30, how Alive is working to keep you connected as Nicole passes through. Our News at 7 live starts now. Welcome to Our News Live at 7. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Kendino Knowles. Around the country, we watch and wait as weather conditions deteriorate with the approaching tropical storm Nicole, the first major threat of the season, churning towards the northwestern Bahamas. Forecasters predict the storm will develop into a hurricane over the next few days. A range of warnings and watches remain in place as the storm strengthens, with scattered showers impacting parts of the country. Nicole is packing sustained winds of 65 miles per hour, and as it continues to grow and it gets better organized, meteorologist Greg Thompson, he's up in a moment with the latest coordinates. But for now, we've got team coverage tonight with our Megan Shepard at NEMA headquarters, Berthany McDermott in Abaco, and Jamila Mizik over in Grand Bahama. We begin with our Megan Shepard. Megan, now I know you're at NEMA headquarters where stakeholders, including the Minister of State responsible for NEMA, health officials and law enforcement, wrapped up a press conference moments ago. What can you tell us?
Thanks, Kendino. As you mentioned, that very important press conference wrapping up not too long ago, where a number of stakeholders updated the public on what they can expect as Tropical Storm Nicole continues to make its way toward the Bahamas. And as you mentioned, the Northwest Bahamas will be feeling the brunt of Tropical Storm Nicole. And as it approaches our country, it will become a hurricane by mid-tomorrow. Now, Captain of NEMA, Stephen Russell, noting that some islands could begin to feel those impacts as early as tonight. And as you can see, just a little bit of rain on and off today. And some 24 shelters are opened around the country, particularly in those islands expected to be impacted. Those are Grand Bahama, Abaco, Berry Islands, and Bimini. Now, earlier today, evacuations began on Sweetings Key, Guana Key, and others. And also speaking today at the press conference was Ministry of Health Representative Antoinette Cumberbatch, and she says all is well on those islands expected to be impacted, but on Abaco there were some challenges.
Well, as of 9 a.m., we commenced an evacuation exercise in Sweetings Key. We're pleased to say 36 of the 46 residents on Sweetings Key adhered to our warning, and they came by buses and ferries to the mainland in Grand Bahama. Additionally, in Guana Key, some 25 workers who lived in, I can say, trailer homes as well on that key, they evacuated those trailers and came ashore on the mainland. I also mentioned that some 100 or more mobile trailers were being occupied by government employees and others in the Marsh Harbor, throughout Abaco. And from the report I got from the managing director, the executive chairman from the DRA this morning, I think up to 70% of the persons adhered to the warning, and they are now seeking alternative location.
Cooperstown, there's a challenge in the Cooperstown area. In the Blackwood area, the main road is flooded due to the rise in king tide. Our vulnerable population were encouraged to seek shelter, accommodation at our various shelters. In the case of evacuation, whether it be local or otherwise, we have made preparations as it relates to that. The Foxtown roads are experiencing flooding in Wood Key due to the rising sea. The weather is currently windy and the seas remain rough.
is it is better to be safe than sorry. So officials are admonishing anyone in vulnerable communities or in low-lying areas, please evacuate sooner rather than later, because if you do stay and you need to be rescued, you are putting others in the way of danger. Now be sure to stay tuned to all of our social media platforms and the ournews.bs Facebook page. And of course, there will be more details on Tropical Storm Nicole at 7:30 p.m. on Our News Tonight.
All right, thanks again, Megan. We'll check in with you, as you said, again in Our News at 7:30. Now, for the latest on the storm's path, we go now to meteorologist Greg Thompson, who is standing by in the Weather Center. Greg?
Yeah, thanks, Kendino, and good evening, everybody. Of course, yeah, you mentioning that Nicole is threatening us right now. First, we'll take you to the radar. There's a lot of bands of showers now moving into the northwest Bahamas, embedded thunderstorms in most of those bands. Those bands will continue to spread across our area as Nicole approaches. Satellite view, we are losing some convection as we speak right now because of the sunset, but we expect the system to continue to strengthen as it pushes towards the west-southwest, approaching Abaco. And as you mentioned, it is forecasted to become a hurricane just before it gets into the Bahamas, the northwest Bahamas, or just as it approaches Abaco, and that's sometime by tomorrow morning. Forecast track will take that system, as I mentioned, towards the west-southwest as a tropical storm overnight, but by early tomorrow and into tomorrow afternoon, we expect that system to gain hurricane status, and it will continue to push towards the west, eventually turning more towards the west-northwest. And by Thursday morning into Thursday afternoon, it should be moving into the Florida mainland and weakening. But hurricane conditions remain in effect for Grand Bahama, Abaco, Bimini, and the Berry Islands. Tropical storm warnings remain in effect for New Providence, Eleuthera, and the Andros area. Kendino?
All right, thanks, Greg. And to keep an eye on Nicole's development, you can see Greg in Our News at 7:30 with the latest coordinates. In the meantime, our team coverage continues with our Jamila Mizik in Grand Bahama and our Berthany McDermott in Abaco. We begin with you, Berthany. Now, over on Grand Bahama, we know that there are several concerns there, but Berthany, over in Abaco, what are you seeing?
Kendino, after a life-changing and devastating experience with Hurricane Dorian back in 2019, Abaconians today telling us they're not taking any chances this time around as they made final preparations ahead of the storm.
Because we just went through Hurricane Dorian, so I'm afraid.
First, we went shopping yesterday. We got some candles and some lanterns and stuff, just in case the power outage. We got a lot of water, and now we're heading for gas.
Earlier today, areas like Blackwood in the north already started seeing flooding hours before the storm is set to hit the island. Meanwhile, cars lined the roadside at Abaco Gas early Tuesday morning. One by one, locals rolled in with their propane gas tanks for a refill. Manager Rex Lowe says they're prepared for the load.
This should be taken care of in the next hour or so.
How long are you guys prepared to continue?
Until the line stops, whenever everybody, this is my people, Abaco is my home, my brother. This is my people, I take care of them.
Maxwell Supermarket saw long lines at cash registers and packed aisles Tuesday morning. We spoke to this tourist who said he and his family are hunkering down for the storm.
We got a small place down in Casarina. We're basically just putting the chairs away, nailing down anything that can fly away, hoping the water doesn't come up too high.
What I've learned from Dorian is because you never drop your guard. You always should be prepared.
Abaco is expected to experience tropical storm conditions Tuesday night, while hurricane conditions are expected to roll in early Wednesday morning. The Leonard M. Thompson Airport is closed with the last international flight leaving shortly after 12:30 p.m. Central Abaco Administrator Donald Roll says when the command center is activated, rescue workers will be on standby.
We'll be communicating with the different shelters and those different emergency personnel on the ground, and we'll be accepting calls and relaying it back out to those persons on the ground with regards to persons who will need assistance.
Kendino, the North Abaco MP, telling us moments before this broadcast the plan was to activate the command center at 7 p.m. this afternoon. Kendino.
All right, thanks, Berthany. And as we said, over on Grand Bahama, there are several areas of concern. One of them, western end of the island. Jamila Mizik joins us now. We understand some residents there are saying they really aren't taking any chances.
That's right, Candy. You know, today I took a trip down to the western end of the island just to find out how residents there were preparing for Nicole. And I spoke to two residents who said that they spent the majority of their lives down in West End and they endured most of the storms there. But this time around, like you said, they aren't taking any chances.
No other choice but to leave because of my husband. He has cancer and he can't walk or anything. So I can't lift him up again and he can't do nothing for himself. So the ambulance is coming to get him and we are going into Freeport.
I listen to the news from NEMA. Say when they come through and they tell you to move and you don't move, you're on your own. So, you know, then that's why I usually move. So I only sit back now and listen on the report. If it can be bad down this way, after I batten up, I'll go to Freeport.
Now, I also spoke to residents in the Freeport area about how they're preparing for Nicole as well, and that report is straight ahead. But for now, I'm reporting live from the EOC at the C.A. Smith building in Freeport, Grand Bahama. Candino, back to you.
All right, thanks, Jamila. Our Jamila Mizik in Grand Bahama and our Berthany McDermott in Abaco. Tonight, we'll check in with both of them in Our News at 7:30. And for continuing coverage throughout the night and into the morning, visit ournews.bs. Still to come on Our News, our teams continue to track Nicole. We'll tell you how the nation's public hospitals are preparing for extreme weather conditions. But first, how New Providence residents flooded stores for last-minute preparations, taking no chances with the threat. Plus, planning to travel soon? We've got the latest updates from Lynden Pindling International Airport. It's all coming up when Our News returns. Those of us in New Providence will start feeling the effects of Tropical Storm Nicole as early as tomorrow morning. And many of the people speaking to our Megan Shepherd today say they're not taking any chances.
The streets of New Providence jam-packed as those living in the capital sought to prepare for Nicole. Our news team spoke to residents to find out how and if they're preparing.
I'm stocking up on my stuff. I get my water and I have all my candles from Bath & Body Works. I gotta go for water afterwards because I work right by Chelsea's Choice and I had even a struggle getting into my work yard because everybody getting water.
Have you prepared grocery shopping or the regular?
Yes, Mom. Grocery shopping and I'm batting up my house.
All we can do is say hope for the best. That's all we can do.
Have you prepared your home or grocery and gas? What have you done so far?
Everything. I'm not those type of persons who sit back and wait for the last minute.
And for those that may still be waiting for the last minute to prepare.
That's just our culture, last minute waiting. And you should always be prepared because you don't know what's going to happen and when it's going to happen.
You always be prepared. You always have them things on hand. That from June to November, you're supposed to be prepared from summer.
Try to be patient because it's about to be very hectic out there and be careful. Most of all, be very careful because everyone has the same mentality of, hey, let me go get this stuff. And then so you got to be extra vigilant.
Resident Dwayne Wright says while he has already secured his home, he's relying on divine intervention.
I think we always need to stay prepared because we don't know what's going to happen. You know, time is so unpredictable. The weather is so unpredictable. Life is so unpredictable. So I think we always ought to be ready because it doesn't matter how much we are prepared, you know, things still can happen. So put your trust in God.
Reporting for Our News, I'm Megan Shepherd.
Grand Bahama's largest healthcare facility, the Rand Memorial Hospital, only recently fully reopened due to the heavy storm surge from Dorian 3 years ago. Public Hospitals Authority Managing Director Abinette Roll responding to concerns about flooding.
We've also sort of moved where we are going to be caring for patients so that they're not right in the face of flood, hopefully. We've secured the roofs as much as possible, and, you know, we just stand to the test if they would withhold the roof. So there are concerns, and we're just praying for the best in relation to the flooding.
It's a similar concern for flooding at Princess Margaret Hospital. Roll also speaking to recent roof repairs.
we're anticipating no leaks as an anticipation. And so we've done quite a bit of works. It's been tested over the past few weeks with a lot of the rain that we've had, and we've been successful in that. However, sometimes we don't know that there's a breach until we now, go through that process. We are prepared as much as possible. So, we have a limited amount of staff that works during the hurricane, but we definitely have those persons who will be able to assist us in the event that something happens.
The NASA Airport Development Company announcing that Lynden Pindling International Airport will remain open on Wednesday once there is no significant change in the current path of the storm. A statement today saying that NAD will be guided by the Met Office and promising updates on airport operations over the next few days. NAD is also encouraging passengers to reach out to their respective airlines for flight updates. Airline contacts can be found at nasa-lpia.com. And Works and Utilities Minister Alfred Sayers also talking about his ministry's preparations today.
BPL is engaged in a very aggressive preparation protocol. One, it's dealing with the management of vegetation around the lines, not only in New Providence, but in our family islands. It is also stocking up in terms of fuel and emergency vehicles so that they will be ready for a response.
Sayers says family islanders also busy today with their own storm prep work.
I also had an opportunity to speak with our team members in Andros, in Grand Bahama, in Eleuthera, and in Abaco, and I received a report in terms of the preparatory work that's being done, the measures being taken to deal with flood mitigation in those flood-prone areas.
Well, Nicole began making waves as a subtropical storm. It's a term that left a lot of us scratching our heads wondering what exactly does that mean and how is it different from a tropical storm? Well, Jasmine Brown explains.
Subtropical storms and tropical storms may have similar names, but they also have many differences. But what exactly is a subtropical storm, and how is it different from the more common tropical storm? The U.S. National Hurricane Center describes a subtropical storm as a non-frontal low-pressure system that has characteristics of both tropical and extratropical cyclones. Put simply, it's a meteorological mashup, making it a hybrid storm. A subtropical storm is also generally more disorganized than a tropical system and has more cold air in its core. It also has a large cloud-free center of circulation with very heavy thunderstorms and a band at least 100 miles from the center. This results in a much wider-reaching, impactful storm. While subtropical storms aren't common during the hurricane season, the same can't be said for tropical storms. Here's what we know. Tropical storms are the most traditional systems that are often thought of during hurricane season. They form mainly in the summer and fall and form over warm oceans by using energy exclusively from the warm water. Tropical storms have a closed circulation and center of circulation, and its peak winds are always near the center. And while they have their differences, tropical systems can morph into subtropical systems, and subtropical systems can turn into tropical systems. Reporting for Our News, I'm Jasmine Brown.
When Our News comes back from the break, we turn our spotlight to stories making headlines across the world as Americans cast their ballots in the midterm elections. Plus, moving on from Electra America's deal to purchase the Grand Lucayan, what the acting prime minister says is next for the resort. Plus, the climate change goal is on life support, according to the Prime Minister, as he makes his case to COP27 in Egypt today. The details when Our News returns. This is our news. Welcome back. A 58-year-old man is behind bars accused of raping a minor 7 years ago. Prosecutors allege that Renville Barr raped an 11-year-old girl back in 2015. The victim is now 18 and the matter was recently reported to police. The McKay Street resident didn't have to enter a plea to the allegations when he appeared before Magistrate Kendra Kelly. Bail was denied and he returns to court in January for a voluntary bill of indictment. Now to another story we've been following. Another major setback in the sale of the ailing Grand Lucayan Resort. The deal with Electra America Hospitality Resort has fallen through. The acting prime minister is explaining why. Marlena Leonard reports.
Electra consistently asked for more time. We cannot continue to delay and delay. The art of making a deal is knowing when to move on.
Acting Prime Minister Chester Cooper weighing in on the huge setback of the highly anticipated sale of the Grand Lucayan Resort. A press release was sent out last night outlining the collapse of the latest attempt to sell the Grand Lucayan. Cooper says the global economic downturn and inflation played a role in the hesitation from Electra America Hospitality Limited.
We announced that we did have an agreement for sale, which was subject to due diligence, subject to agreeing the heads of agreement. In that intervening period, Electra is advised that things changed.
The Grand Lucayan has seemingly been a hard sell, with neither the Minnis administration nor the Davis administration finding themselves successful in selling the landmark property. The Minnis administration bought the resort from Hong Kong conglomerate Hutchinson Whampoa in August 2018 for $65 million. In March 2020, the government signed a heads of agreement with Royal Caribbean Cruise Lines and the ITM Group, which promised to invest more than $300 million in the redevelopment of the property and construction of a cruise port. But as with many projects over the past 2 years, the COVID-19 pandemic impacted the agreement. But the acting prime minister says just because the hotel hasn't been sold doesn't mean progress isn't being made.
We still have 140 people employed. The hotel remains open. We're working on putting heads in beds. We are consistently increasing the airlift through Bahama.
Reporting for Our News, I'm Marlena Leonard.
We turn our attention now to stories making headlines across the world. Americans went to the polls today to cast ballots for the first national election of Joe Biden's presidency. Democrats bracing for disappointing results, anxious that their grip on the U.S. House may be slipping, as well as their hold on the Senate. The party's incumbent governors in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Nevada are also facing serious challenges from Republicans. On Monday night, President Biden said he thought Democrats would keep the Senate, but acknowledged the House is tougher. Tonight's results could have a profound impact on the final 2 years of Biden's presidency. And 7 people arrested in northeastern China for clashing with authorities enforcing COVID-19 quarantine restrictions. The violence comes as China reports new COVID cases nationwide, with 2,200 cases in southern China on Tuesday alone. While the numbers remain relatively low, China has relentlessly pursued a strict zero COVID policy on quarantines. Anti-pandemic measures prompting backlashes across the country, forming a rarely seen challenge to Communist Party authority. A European Parliament's inquiry committee investigating the use of surveillance spyware by the government says the EU executive arm and member countries are failing to properly tackle a surveillance scandal targeting opposition politicians and journalists. A draft report says the European Council and national governments are practicing a code of silence and regretted that the Commission only shared information concerning spyware attacks on its own employees. Mexico's president saying Monday he will host a meeting of leaders from Latin America this month, including most of those recently elected leftists. President Andrés Obrador said the president of Chile, Argentina, Ecuador, Peru, and Colombia are coming to Mexico City. He's still waiting for confirmation on Brazil's president-elect for the meeting scheduled for November 23rd through 25th. And the U.S. Department of Justice said Monday it is bringing criminal charges against 7 Haitian gang leaders for the kidnapping of numerous U.S. citizens, including Christians, missionaries, and children. The State Department announced a $1 million reward for each of the 3 gang members who they say are responsible for kidnapping 16 U.S. citizens. Most of them were held captive for 61 days. All 3 have been charged with conspiracy to commit hostage taking. Well, Prime Minister Philip Davis stood before world leaders at COP27 in Egypt today, using Tropical Storm Nicole as one of the most glaring examples of the impact of climate change on island states like the Bahamas.
I live in the most beautiful country on earth. But right now, even as I speak, Bahamians are mobilizing to prepare for the impact of yet another powerful storm, a tropical storm, Nicole. So I come here with a simple request. Let's get real. What we need most at this conference is to confront the radical truth.
The Prime Minister also wasting no time revealing the truth as he sees it, saying the universal goal to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees is on life support.
The realities of war, economic headwinds, the hangover from the pandemic, and competition among world powers cannot be used as justification not to confront these imminent dangers. It's only going to get worse. Statements without binding commitments or enforcement mechanisms have been used again and again as a way to postpone real action.
Still to come on our news, today in history, find out interesting facts about the day that was November 8th as Donald Trump defeated Hillary Clinton in the 2016 presidential elections. Plus, Greg is back with your extended weather forecast. And then in our news at 7:30, shocking video of a semi-truck overturned after crashing into a western New Providence shopping center. The story when our news returns. Welcome back to our news. It's time now to turn our spotlight on events that shaped the day that was November 8th. Take a look. On November 8, 1923, Adolf Hitler attempted to start a coup in Munich, but was arrested 4 days later. The effort by right-wing members of the army and the Nazi Party was foiled by the government, and Hitler was charged with high treason. In 1960, Democrat John F. Kennedy was elected United States President, narrowly defeating Republican Vice President Richard Nixon. Then on this day in 2013, the Philippines endured what many considered its worst natural disaster when the country was struck by a super typhoon Haiyan, one of the most powerful cyclones ever recorded to strike land. And finally, in 2016, Donald Trump defeated Democrat Hillary Clinton to be elected President of the United States. The Republican ticket of businessman Trump and Indiana Governor Mike Pence defeated the Democratic ticket of Clinton and the United States Senator from Virginia, Tim Kaine, in what was considered one of the greatest upsets in American history. It was the fifth and most recent presidential election in which the winning candidate lost the popular vote. Well, that does it for us in News at 7, but we are still tracking Tropical Storm Nicole as residents in Abaco and Grand Bahama, where the storm is expected to make the greatest impact, are bracing for what it will bring over the next 24 to 48 hours. Standing by with continuing team coverage is our News 730 anchor, Atalia Hall.
Yes, Ken, officials and residents taking the storm quite seriously. Nicole is expected to strengthen over the next few hours. We are tracking her movements and have the latest coordinates at the top.
Live on our news at 7:30, Tropical Storm Nicole is intensifying and is expected to become a hurricane on Wednesday. Our team coverage continues.
NEMA officials urging residents in vulnerable and low-lying communities to evacuate. This is Tropical Storm Nicole is expected to become a Category 1 hurricane by Wednesday afternoon. I'm Megan Shepard, and I will have the details tonight on our news.
West Grand Bahama is one of the areas expected to take a hard hit by the impacts of Nicole. And while some residents say they are prepared to leave, others say they will ride it out at home. I'm Jamila Mizik, and I'll have the details coming up tonight on Our News.
And don't forget to charge those phones. We speak with Alive about how you can stay connected throughout the storm. Our news live at 7:30 starts in a moment.